you ever fantasized about quitting your job and getting back to the land? Living fully, or at least partially, self-sufficiently? If you're like me, you've never, ever thought about doing these things. Because if you're like me, you grew up with parents who did these things. Mr. Toastmaster, or Ms. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, I grew up on a farm in northern Alberta. Long before I was born, when my parents first moved up to northern Alberta and bought a forested quarter section, which is a half-mile by half-mile. It's a section of land you buy up there. My dad was driving around and he found an antique sawmill that he loaded up and took back home. And he sawed down the trees in what would be our yard, and he turned them into lumber to build our stacked wall house and all the furniture inside. Not an easy feat. As a child, I thought this was normal. We raised goats for milk, chickens for eggs, rabbits and pigs for meat, and dogs to scare away coyotes, wolves, and bears, and cats to eat the mice in our barn. I loved looking after our farm animals. As a young child, my favorite thing was when mother goats would reject their kids, because that meant I could bottle feed them. I was too young to understand the tragedy of the situation. I escaped having to shovel after the pigs, which my older brother to this day thinks I'm spoiled and black character because of. Where I'm from, most people work in oil and gas or forestry and are well compensated. In contrast, my parents worked part-time jobs doing things like bus driving, working as a librarian, public health promotion, or mail delivery. My parents would say we didn't need a large income because we lived differently. I would say we lived differently because we didn't have a large income. We shopped very frugally, and as a child, when I asked for something in a store, I was often told it's not on sale. And I grew up thinking if something wasn't on sale, it wasn't for sale. As I got older, especially when I hit puberty, I began to question the sacrifices that we made. I got very, very interested in girls, and I realized that our lifestyle negatively eclipsed the chances of getting girls interested in me. For one thing, living rurally, our water supply was hooked up to a dugout, which is a man-made lake on our property. Because it was man-made, there wasn't moving water, it was still water. And the plants that grew in it decomposed anaerobically without oxygen, as opposed to a river or a natural lake where they decompose naturally. The water that I showered in came from this lake, and a side effect of water decomposing, the plants decomposing anaerobically, is that they smell like farts. So every day I showered in fart water. Wealthy families could afford a pump to push air down in their dugouts, but we could not afford such a thing. If you ask me, one cannot put a price on not smelling like farts. Another problem was that our washing machine constantly broke down. I'd always have grease on my clothes, which I always try to dress nice because I noticed that girls at high school, they dress nice. There's all this oil money, very nouveau riche people there. My dad would buy parts and try to fix it, but it would always break again. Of course, looking back, I got off easy because many kids who grew up on farms like me often showed up with manure on their clothes. Another thing about northern Alberta that I wanted to have and didn't have was a vehicle. Everything is spread out there, unlike Victoria, and a personal vehicle is a way to get around. It's a sign of independence. And there's many there's a lot more men than women up there. And competing for the girls in high school, there were a lot of men in their 20s working on oil and gas, and they all had trucks. So I felt that I needed to have one, but alas, I never had a vehicle, personal vehicle going up there. So in the end, when I turned 18, I got away as quick as I could. I studied engineering and was able to move to Victoria, and I work in the rat race, and I'm very happy to do it.